welcome to our review of Burning Wheel.
Zen, I was the GM of the first campaign, the longer of the two. We played a game about a bunch of mercenaries who were contracted on the bad side of the war to help expand the borders of an evil empire called the Unbroken Dynasty. And it was after the war, just holding the front line kind of thing with some intrigue and a lot of infighting between the players.
I think that's an understatement.
That was it. That was the whole game was
yeah, pretty much the entire game devolved into like the players screwing each other over. I there was a point in time where I was just like, all right, I have nothing else to add to this game. You guys are just making your own obstacles, so have fun.
It was amazing.
we were our own bad guys.
We were the baddies.
Yeah. After that,
Everyone was young Rodin, which are the rat people in Burning Wheel, and then they had to do a coming of age adventure.
character creation is, in my opinion, the most complicated part of playing the game.
Oh, it's my favorite part.
Yeah. We'll focus on humans managed setting. There are several settings within the human race that you can basically build your character on, depending on your concept. You build life paths on top of each other, so your character was a farmer for a little while, but then they started milling their own flour, and now they're a miller. And each of these life paths give you access to certain skills and certain traits that help inform what kind of character you are.
Only certain life paths can go to other ones. So if you want to be the big gallant knight, you have to be rich. You have to train as a page. You have to train as a squire, and then you can become a knight. You can't just go, well, first I was a farmer, then I was a wizard, then I was a knight, and now I'm playing the game as a fighter, wizard, thief. It doesn't work like that in this game. They all have to connect.
Grounded medieval fantasy. That is very difficult to get away from in this game. You would need to hack it to get away from it.
It could be sometimes difficult to try and figure out what sort of a life path is Pinky? What sort of a life path do they mean by bushwhacker? Something that has multiple different definitions there.
Those kind of touches let me know their influences and let me know what weird, dumb historical garbage they're into, because I think the only reason I know there's a specific word for making crossbows is because of Burning Wheel. Attiliator.
Yes.
And you get a number of skill points. You get a number of like starting money, basically.
Yeah, you get related skills and related traits to describe your character to your life path. So farmers get like farming stuff, and knights get knight stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
But some of them, the first one listed on each one is a forced purchase. It will give you the points to purchase it, but the first skill and the first trait listed on every life path is something you must start with.
I think it reinforces the life path itself, because usually the first skill is what the life path is. Like woodcutter
First
has
skill is the
fire
most
building
important
as the
skill.
first skill.
Yeah.
Hunter has
You cannot
hunting.
be a
as the first.
woodcutter if you can't cut wood.
Yeah. It sort of reinforces this, like, no matter what, your character is going through their life and they are learning these skills.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they have
whether
to
they
actually be part of that and do it as a profession.
Yeah.
Resource points, also known as RPs.
Mhm.
During character creation, your life path pays you, and your life path pays you a setting appropriate amount. If you are weaving baskets as a life path, that will pay you a weaving basket's wage. If you are a king, that will pay you a king's wage in resource points. And then you spend those resource points on most material things and also some immaterial things. Reputations, relationships with people, things like that. Close NPC relationships are bought at character creation with the same system that buys you a house, and that buys you a sword, and that buys you a reputation.
Because they're all just as useful.
Yep.
Yeah.
In this game, they are.
And currency is abstracted in Burning Wheel to the point that it also includes barter and favors and your reputation.
Because of that, characters can start off with very different resource amounts from each other. But Burning Wheel, despite the historical fantasy setting, is not in any way D&D. Like,
No.
Nope.
it
Nope.
is
These books care nothing about balance.
no.
Nothing at all.
Balance is for suckers.
Not only that, I think balance would detract from the game. It would
It would be so much worse.
It would
if
be
everyone
way
was
more
good.
boring if everyone was on equal footing.
Just the best part is that, like, yeah, we could all try everything, but also I suck so much at this. Like, you look at the system and you know there is zero chance of my character achieving this.
Yes,
There's
and I think
nothing I could possibly do to get to this point, and the player at the table next to you can just do it like it's nothing.
Where, yeah, of course, if you've spent your whole life being a soldier, you're going to be good at soldier things. But if you spent your whole life being a politician, you're going to be good at politicking and like stuff like that.
skill tests. So in Burning Wheel, the roll system is you roll a number of dice usually equal to your skill with help and with some calculations. Number of d6s, the number that are equal to or higher than normally 4 is the number of successes. You need to get a number of successes to win.
Yeah.
It's the Shadowrun system. Shades are not in Shadowrun,
Yes.
but this dice system
The
is
dice
very
system is
heavily
Shadowrun.
It's Shadowrun based.
In addition to beliefs, instincts, and traits, the core of the game.
Okay, I want to do this. What skill matches it? Oh, my character was not built for that. So
Yes.
in some ways limited you a little bit there, but again, it was limiting because of that grounding, so it was kind of fair.
So the basis of every roll in Burning Wheel, the player defines their intent, what they want to happen if they're successful with the roll. And then we look at the character sheets and the situation in general and determine the task needed to accomplish that goal. So we'll look at your skills and everything else and whatever one applies the best in how you describe yourself doing this thing is how you roll.
Unless you take sorcery and then you just break it all.
Unless you take sorcery, which is completely broken and super powerful. As is it is meant to be, I'm pretty sure. That's intentional.
Yeah.
I've never thought that a game where reading and writing are separate would be so fun because they are separate. Like, you can know how to read and not know how to write. And
It's
you
the
can know
best
how to
separation
know how
of
to
skills
read.
ever. Like, it's so minute detail.
And then another very interesting thing about Burning Wheel is failure, because failure is both common and interesting, is how it's always meant to
Oh,
be.
it's designed to be most rolls fail.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like, the
You,
odds are skewed against you on 99% of rolls on the wheel. My point is, like, that's what I don't know where it is on this, but fate, like, ties into that everything's designed to fail
Yep.
system.
But yeah, that was something that I actually loved about this game, because when you're playing D&D, you don't want to fail. You want to be able to go and hit the thing or do whatever you were trying to do. In this game, trying and failing was probably one of the most fun things that could happen, because a failure and a consequence always made things more interesting.
Yes.
Mhm.
During a failure, usually you don't do what you want to do. That can sometimes happen if it's interesting, but it's rare that it happens. Oftentimes it's you do, but there's a twist or a cost, or it doesn't work out the way you thought it was, or you try to do this task to accomplish this goal, and you did the task, but the goal doesn't work out. Failures in Burning Wheel do not make from a good GM do not make characters incompetent, because they are not incompetent.
And interesting failure in this game is a prerequisite to even being able to roll. If
Yeah.
you failing a roll doesn't make something interesting happen, we don't even bother rolling in this game.
Yeah, which is a great
two
way
things.
to look at it.
Yes.
I've taken that attitude forward into everything
Yeah.
since, like, looking at Burning Wheel, because that's so much more intriguing if
Yeah.
you only care about roles that matter.
In order
Is
to
it-
roll, it must matter to someone's beliefs. There must be a chance of failure, and there must be an interesting consequence of failure.
If there's nothing interesting that can happen from the failure of the roll, you just say yes. You move on. The player gets what they wanted. No big deal.
Mhm.
But if there is something interesting that could happen, you define the terms. Not always, but usually the GM will tell you the consequences of failure before you roll. And there is a rule that says that if death is on the line, it must be made apparent before any rolls are made. Like you will know if failure means death
Yep.
before you even agree to it.
I told you there was a crossbow. It's not my fault if you don't see weapons as deadly implements. That's
What?
on.
What? That's fair. That's very fair. Do you want to talk about obstacles? That's the number of successes, number of usually 4s or higher on your dice you want to roll. It's a specific list of obstacles with some examples of like, here's the general default. When trying to persuade people, your obstacle is their will stat. You can also roll a versus test, so you're rolling against another character, player or NPC.
Versus tests were neat because someone almost always wins in a versus test.
Yes.
Because they're rolling with the same rules, or as
Yeah.
opposed to a static obstacle means there's a pretty high chance of failure. Where the versus test, someone wins.
Yeah, so you're right. Someone
wins every versus test, making them more interesting, in my opinion, than a standard test, because someone gets their objective and the other person pointedly doesn't.
Yes. And then the other common type, I think, are graduated tests as well. And so that is roll against obstacle 0 or 1. Roll and ignore the obstacle. And the more successes you get, the better you do.
Most of the time, it's for knowledge.
Yeah, graduated tests are usually for knowledge or perception, depending on how things are set up by the GM.
I noticed that was pretty much what the GM was spending their time doing, looking up and finding what the proper obstacle was, that or role-playing.
Yeah.
And that was interesting in this is their role in this game.
And to its credit, that's my favorite way to GM is to mediate as opposed to be the source of the story like you kind of have to be in some other systems. You want to use your skills, you go for the interesting approach because that's what you're going to be the best at.
Yeah.
And I like that lawyering forces you to do that.
And skills that you're not rolling can help your roll because you can use what's called a field of related knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah,
Also
every
known as a
persuasion
fork. That's
test
what's abbreviated
can most persuasion tests can include a little bit of seduction to make them more potent. It's great.
Yeah. I built my character around fields of related knowledge. I had like 4 different doctoring skills, and often 1 or 2 of them, when I was rolling one of them, would help me with the others.
Basically, when you're assembling your dice pool, you take your dice from your skill that you're using to roll, and then based on your role play, hopefully, add in the skills that help. So again, if you're spying on people, adding in an intrigue wise to your observation will help.
Yeah. And if I'm saying hidden, also adding stealthy is another skill that would help. Things like that. You can learn new skills over time.
Yeah.
In Burning Wheel. But I think learning new skills is one of the segments where Burning Wheel shows its intended campaign length.
I am so excited to play like a 4-year-long, boring-ass Burning Wheel game.
Yes, that is...
Like, I will show up every week for Farming Sim, Hobbit Town, like we talked about.
Our game, we intentionally compressed it to 9 sessions, because we didn't want to play it for too long, because we have other games that we also wanted to play.
Yeah.
But Burning Wheel is meant to be played over, like, at least a year.
Long time. Yeah.
The recommended campaign length is 20 to 50 sessions.
Yes.
So,
but learning new skills, I think, still works. Learning a new skill is interesting because it doesn't strongly penalize you. There is a penalty when you're doing a skill you don't know, but because oftentimes the penalty, the obstacle gets doubled, basically. And that's the thing. But oftentimes the number of dice you're rolling is higher than your normal skill dice would be for similar skills. So rolling like 4 or 6 dice against an obstacle.
It actively encourages you to learn new skills.
It does.
Yeah.
My point was, if you're the fish out of water character at the beginning of the story, like if you're playing a character who's explicitly not where they're supposed to be, that'll exist at first, but by the new skill system, you slowly acclimate to your new situation, being equipped for it.
Yep.
So you can have fun playing a character who's not where they're supposed to be, and then by session 3 or 4, you've picked up enough skills to keep up. Your story is about learning those skills, and that makes it possible. Where in D&D, if you're a fish out of water, you just have to wait for the dungeon to be cleared and you like loot XP. D&D character growth is stepped.
It is very much stepped.
You do it in leaps, whereas in Burning Wheel, you do it in like
one by one. Yeah, single footsteps.
One test after another, you slowly get better.
Yeah, so just so the basics are said, when you're testing a skill, there are 3 different types of tests depending on how hard it is for you to do what you want to do, and you log those tests. And once you log a certain amount of them, you level up that skill to the next highest number.
Exactly.
You get one more die.
Yeah.
And going back to talking about failure, one of the ones that's required is called a challenging test, where the obstacle is higher than the number of dice you have. Without spending Artha, which we'll get to, it is impossible to succeed that test.
And so it was kind of interesting. If you had a skill that you were really good at, you're a sword master, it's only going to count if you're getting really difficult tests. Because if you're doing a routine thing, beating someone who's never used a sword before, that's not going to help you grow.
And that forces all the players to go into more and more challenging positions.
Yes, it wasn't in this campaign.
This is a game about throwing your characters directly into the tiger's mouth and just hoping for the best.
Yes.
Though in some cases, when your skills were very low already, it could be incredibly difficult to get those easy tests, simply because I have field bandaging of 2. That means I can bandage a scrape. Is anything interesting ever going to come of my failing to bandage a scrape? No, not really. And besides that, anything that comes up is going to be a lot harder.
That's negated by 2 things. We only kind of touched on one, and then the second one we didn't touch on at all for that like low skill problem. The help that gives you the bonus tests, we did that a little bit. That's really what you're supposed to do in those situations where I'm skilled, but I'm not an expert, so I'm helping someone, so I get the points.
Yeah, load on the forks or help someone else's test.
Yeah. And then the downtime where you could spend hours of your life grinding away at a skill is also meant to...
I did that a little bit, but then things progressed in the story where it didn't make sense anymore to do that.
So during so those are the 2 things.
Once again, that's a longer term thing.
Yeah, it's a long term thing.
So the way shades work is if you normally all skills start as black shade, you need 4 or higher to get a success. You can increase it to gray shade, 3 or higher, which is meant to be like the peak of human ability, and a white shade, 2 or higher, which means you only fail on a 1 on a d6, which is very powerful. That's like explicitly supernaturally powerful.
People beginning the game just skip right past shading.
Yes.
It's not a recommended way to play. We did because we wanted to see what would happen.
And we like fun.
Wow.
At creation, it was an interesting way to increase strength. I found it much more interesting later in the game.
During character creation, you can spend 5 skill points or 5 stat points to increase a stat or a skill to a shade. And so you'll start off with lower skills or stats because shading is extremely difficult and time-consuming during the game. It's basically the only way to guarantee you get it at all. And your potential for success is much higher.
Increasing the shade in the story, like as opposed to buying it at the beginning within the story and using the Artha to do that, that was super interesting because that was a sudden, you are better at this for this period of time. And that only triggered because you spent a bunch of points that made to go with the belief and instincts and whatnot on that.
So we had 1 deeds point during our game that was ordered to Krim. And so Krim was able to do something called an Aristeia, I believe. It's a fancy term for temporarily increasing your shade for a scene. In addition to that, that is a temporary increase.
You spend the spent points.
Yeah, you track all of the points you spent on the skill that was being rolled, and once it gets up to a certain threshold, you can shade shift. But that threshold is something like 20 fate points. I want to say 5 persona and the deeds, or 3
and 1
deeds,
deed,
or something like that.
You need 1 deed.
Yeah.
No, for permanent.
So it was a little unclear.
No, I think
if you
it's
had to
still 1
spend
deed.
it at the time.
I thought it was 3 deeds for.
Well, there's a limit. It's not that high, but like you have to spend spent points to permanently shade shift. So you have to actively invest your points.
Yeah. Artha comes in 3 types. Fate is the most common, still useful, but relatively least useful type. You spend it to get exploding 6s on dice if they don't already have them. If they already have exploding 6s, which a few do by default, then you spend it to re-roll 1 die that was not a success.
Reroll traders.
Yeah, it was 1, I believe.
Yeah, basically, you get fate for playing your character according to how your character is built. So if you play a knight like a knight, you're gonna get fate in the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fate is the easiest one to get. It is in many ways expected. If you try to get other ones and don't, it'll often default back to Fate. Persona. This one you get for a few ways, but the most common one is accomplishing your character's goals, usually that are tied to the
achieving
beliefs.
something.
But it could be anything. If there's a party goal or a group goal that no one has a belief about, but it's still something you work together to accomplish,
if the
you still all
party
get a
was-
persona for it.
Yeah.
But you also
Or
get
more
it
personal quests, but whatever.
for Mold Breaker is a big one.
When
Pi-
faced with a tough decision, using your character sheet to determine which way you break on that decision.
Yes, and and it's important to, like, you have to portray the inner conflict, even if it's just a few sentences. It's like, my character wants this and this, or they are like this, but they want to be like this, or it's just inner conflict. Play it, portray it, and then at the end of the session, you get persona for it. Persona has
Well,
two
what that
uses.
does-
Let's talk about what the uses are
Yeah.
first. One, you spend a persona to get an extra die for a skill roll, or a roll in general, actually. This is the only time when you get extra dice without it affecting the difficulty when it comes to advancement, which I mentioned earlier. You can do this up to 3 times, spending a persona each for a single roll. Additionally, it is an optional rule. Honestly, it's one I really like. You can spend a persona when your character would die to not die, even though you should, and to have them hold on, and it still means they're in trouble or in a terrible situation, but it stops them from dying.
Yeah.
That stockpiling or keeping one in reserve to just keep your character
Yes.
alive. Not have put all of this time and effort and work into playing this character and then just have one unlucky roll and they're dead now.
Yeah.
And actually having that persona in reserve was a really nice touch on the system.
And it makes
Yeah.
it so you are able to be reckless with your characters without having to actually worry that you'd have to make a new character.
Well, I feel it the opposite direction. I feel that making the players responsible for their life and death via, if you don't want to die, hold on to a persona. That power is now in the player's hand to say no to character death. So
Like,
they're responsible for holding on to that. That means the game master doesn't need to care about killing characters.
And
If
I
the
know that-
characters die, characters die.
Yes.
If they wanted to live, they should have held on to their own persona. And I love that.
Time when I did the climactic duel with Gale, like, the fact that I had spent my last persona going into that duel, it made the level of tension so much higher for me,
Yeah.
because I knew that if I died, I was done.
You still have to be scared for your character, because spending that persona point, yeah, you're not going to die, but we don't supersede the narrative. You're not coming out of that unscathed.
How do we gain Artha?
The driving force of this game revolves around 3 words: beliefs, instincts, and traits. Characters will have 3 beliefs. Usually it's some state, some drive or purpose that they have. Like, I believe the king is an imposter. I will unthrone the king. Perfectly good belief. Instincts are things that can automatically happen. I always draw my sword when danger comes. Things
Never
like
leave
that.
home without my wallet.
Yep. Whenever
Yeah,
surprised,
exactly.
hesitate.
You can always invoke those as a player to tell the GM, oh no, I have an instinct about always keeping my armor on. I'm definitely in my armor right now. And you can have negative instincts as well, like when I see an unattended pie, I steal it. And when an instinct gets you into trouble, you earn some Artha. There's the nudge there to be like, do the bad thing. Go on, just try the bad thing.
The double-edged sword is trouble, but you get Artha, or auto flashback to not getting into a certain type of trouble. Yes.
Clear.
And
Beliefs
these
and
2
instincts
things, there you go.
are very mutable. Generally, you write it in for the session. You can change it every session. You can also leave it blank and write it in mid-session if you aren't sure or want to, or there's too many possibilities of how things might play out, so you're leaving it blank and want to write it in later.
I changed my beliefs and traits every single session, pretty much, in order to make sure that it fit things, and it moved my character around a lot, so I often cycled back to old beliefs and traits if I thought that they were still relevant.
Based on what I know about the character, what sort of belief could I change it to that is more fitting for what's happening right now?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the ways you flag character growth for yourself, is like, okay, they believed this, but then this happened. and now I have to, I have to change how I believe to move on.
Yeah.
And from a GM side, though, the beliefs and instincts of this game are all the GM needs to know, besides the inciting incident like setup of the game, because the player's beliefs are what you chase after and what you hit them with during a session.
Yes. The GM's entire purpose is to challenge the player character's beliefs.
So as a player, if you want to flag to the GM, hey, I'd be interested in exploring what happens this way, you can use your belief to tell them that let's put the story in this direction and see what happens.
Traits are not mutable. You buy them during character creation. If you can describe your character as hairy, then they are a hairy person. They have thick, dark hair all over them. If you buy the hairy trait, then one of the first things people notice about you is that you are hairy. You are the hairiest person around, basically.
Yeah.
Traits are not explicitly unique, but they are significant, and they're if you have two characters with hairy, they are the two hairiest people around. They're like big deal descriptors. Some of personality, some of appearance.
The easiest example I give is I am under 6 feet tall, but I am, like 5'10", 5'11". I am tall, but I do not have the tall trait. Like, I am not capital T tall. When you look at me, your first thought is, that's not a tall person. That's just a person-sized person. But I am a taller person. But that's the difference. A trait, if I was 6'7", I would be tall. Capital T tall. When you look at me, you think they're tall. But now it's just, no, they're just a person who is taller than average.
There are 3 types of traits. And some of them, they're all intended to be character traits that describe the character. And, in addition, some of them will cost multiple points, and they will affect your dice. Some of them will be sometimes called a call-on trait. They'll break ties or re-roll, I think, 1 failure.
Call-on
traits,
die
and then above that, there's
powers.
die traits, which are either special powers or they'll always affect certain skill rolls under some circumstances.
They're feats, basically.
They're special powers, 5th edition feats, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. So
they are both positive and negative. Like there are.
Yes.
And I think actually there's more negative traits than positive, technically.
Yeah. And all traits, negative and positive, cost points. There are even negative traits don't give you negative points or like give you points back or anything like that, because you're not building your character to be powerful. The point of this game is building your character to be interesting and dramatic.
The thing is, in this game, because of the reward system, when you have a negative trait and you use that to break the story in a different direction, you get a reward.
Yep.
Like
and
my alcoholic trait was incredibly useful.
Powerful for having negative
you
traits.
Powered your success with booze and rampant alcohol.
With alcohol. That's how you did it.
The trait vote, where we actually got to decide whether or not we wanted to keep playing with the traits or basically add on different traits to different characters.
So a trait vote happens arbitrarily. It's intended to happen once every arc or every chapter. It doesn't give specific details. The group figures it out, and I think that's fine.
And that trait vote was so much fun because it was a great time to be able to figure out, okay, what do all the other players think about this?
And it does a tone shift. Like it changed, the tone of the game changed after the trait vote dramatically. Like it was noticeable change.
The players come together and basically nominate new traits for the people that they've been watching. They act as the audience and be like, no, this character is exhibiting this trait, so they should have it on their sheet. And then we all nominate traits and vote, and that you walk away more often than not, you will walk away with something new.
Yes, that you can play to a trait even if you don't have it in order to get it next time. You're basically Oscar baiting for a trait.
Yeah, it's like you don't dress up for the job you have, you dress up for the job you want.
That has all that we've talked about been the main component of the game and what you will be engaging with probably
99% of the time.
You can run the entire game without stop the entire game and then
without
come back
anything
and see what we
else.
have to say.
In fact, I would recommend it because there's still a lot to learn.
It's pieces. You only include the pieces that are necessary for your story. If your story never has a big fight, you never touch the fight system. You don't bother learning it. If you never have ranged combat, same thing.
Everything we've talked about before, just so it's said, is in the free hub and spokes on the Burning Wheel HQ. You can
Yeah.
go check it out, read through it all. The
Yep.
life path system isn't in there. You'll have to actually get the book for that, but there are a couple of adventures that are free as well with if you want to go check it.
Yes, with pre-built characters. Steel is simply this: it is being shocked as a mechanic. Your character mechanically cannot react like a player character. Where like I immediately draw my sword, roll initiative, let's do this. It is okay. How shocked are you? How much bloodshed have you seen in the past? That is what steel is. The
Yeah.
higher steel your character has, the more unfazed they are.
The more stuff you have been exposed to, the more desensitized you are to it.
The pacing in Burning Wheel is a bit dynamic. We don't necessarily track moment to moment, so you hesitating for half a second might not matter if we're just rolling skills. But if someone's got a knife to your throat, those couple seconds are going to matter.
Resources is what we talked about.
didn't
The abstraction. Sorry.
We didn't really use them.
We didn't use them
No.
a lot. No, we
No.
started with our stuff. We didn't have a lot of things combined. We didn't do a resource cycle. Usually, trade vote and resource cycle can be done at the same time, but our game took place over the course of like a week.
It was like a week.
Yeah, and it's a prime example of only use what you need in the book. Like,
Yep.
we didn't need the resources rules, so
So we didn't use it at all.
You want to buy a thing, you have resources, dice. You roll the dice to get it. You either don't get it, or you get it, but you lose some of your resource dice temporarily. And resource can go up or down. I think oftentimes, if you fail them, it can go down much more rapidly as a result of you losing money. And
Yeah.
so it
Yes.
is another interesting
And
thing when it comes to role if the beliefs matter. In classic D&D senses, buying things usually doesn't matter for beliefs. That's another thing where say yes or roll also applies not just to skills, but to everything.
Yeah.
And so
and
sometimes
it's
you'll just
another
say yes
thing
to
that
beliefs.
drives those characters. Like, if you definitely need that money to buy that sword, you're gonna go out and do other things and drive yourself. Like, if you have that belief, you're gonna drive yourself to increase your skills and in order to get that.
So
Circles?
So back in the life path system, I mentioned there were a bunch of different settings, like subsettings within each. They're called stock, the races that populate the worlds of Burning Wheel. When you belong to a certain setting, you have access to the same people that exist in that setting. So if you're a farmer, you would know the people that work in the fields. You would know the miller. You'd know the baker in town. And Circles gives you access to that. Basically, you can make a roll to summon up a person that is tangentially related to your lifestyle and have them come in and either help or hurt you depending on the outcome of the roll. A bad roll could mean that they still show up, but they were the one that broke up your brother's marriage and they hate you, like things like that.
the classic one that is brought up is Han saying, I know a guy, let's go to Cloud City. Lando, my friend Lando's there, he's cool. He fails the circles. He still knows Lando. He still meets up with Lando. Lando's still friendly to him. And it turns out Lando actually already made a deal with the Empire and they were waiting there for him.
The unused mechanic I am most sad about is we never got to spite.
Spite?
Spite.
What's spite?
That's
The Dark Elf
that's a
emotion
Dark
mechanic.
Oh,
yeah, that's
let's go into Duel of Wits, because that was probably pretty quick to talk about. Duel of Wits is a debate system where
Yeah,
the
powered
both
by
sides
rock,
of the debates, powered by rock, paper, scissors-esque. You choose your cards face down of your actions of what points and rhetorical comments and what you're going to say in advance. You flip over the cards. They have their own counters or like counter those counters or things like that.
interactions. The
Interactions.
actions interact. with
Both
each other.
sides have different levels of
Yes.
kind of HP.
Skill rolls
Yeah.
are done related to what actions those are, and there's basically like discussion HP that each side has, and the first one to reduce to 0 loses with
Yeah,
some
it's-
concessions.
It's complicated to explain. Check out a couple of Let's Plays with Duel of Wits.
Yeah.
Read
Ours
the
does not
book,
have it.
Yeah, no.
You-
Yeah, no.
and you still won't quite understand it until you get into it.
Yeah.
Once you understand it, it is one of the best social combat mechanics I've ever seen in an RPG.
It's extremely well done, but also it's extremely hard to grasp initially because it's so different from.
It makes
Everything
sense.
else.
Just the best advice is trust it. Just do it. Just do the thing as it says, and then make sense of it later.
And
Follow the
recognize
steps.
that if you're a character not statted out for Duel of Wits, for doing social skills, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, don't do it.
No.
Don't try it.
I'm not gonna do
Don't-
well.
It's the playing
Run
to your
away!
strength.
Run away!
Play to your
Run away!
You don't have to run away. It's like what happens during a failure for a skill test. You can do it
Stab.
and fail. Also, yes,
Stab.
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 Yep.
Fail and argue.
There is
That's
a
also-
move in Duel of Wits that is "fuck you, I'm gonna stab you now."
Yeah, it's after the conclusion. It's called Murder Most Foul, and the loser can try to get the other person to be compelled into a duel, or you can just like ambush them in the hallway and just slit their throat. The one addition I wish we could add to Burning Wheel as an action is to like throw your shoe at somebody. Just
Yeah. Or
Like an
audiences could
action
throw
where it's not
tomatoes.
intended to.
Yeah.
It's not intended to hurt them, but it's intended to like throw them off guard.
I mean, you
Make a
can't
skill
escape
test.
escape by throwing a shoe, I think.
Yeah.
That's basically
Okay.
what we want.
So yeah, Duel of Wits is excellent.
Yeah.
Similar to it, there are two combat subsystems. Let's talk about Bloody Versus quickly. It is slightly more complicated than the skill roll. You basically create your pool as normal, split it between attack and defense, and then roll attacker versus
Yeah.
defender on each side.
Bloody Versus is the quick fight mechanic, where it's like, all right, we have to do a couple like exchanges.
We want it to be
let's
more
go
in
back
depth. Yeah, we want it to
real
be.
fast.
Yeah, you want to succeed, but you still want to have you still want there to be wounds on both sides for the potential. This is the system that is that. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, this is a fair fight, but simplified.
It's basically 2 versus tests.
Yeah, and it's how any beginning group should run combat for a
Yes.
while until you're
Yes.
to
good with
put
the
it
rules.
in D&D examples, because that's what we've been doing. Bloody Versus is theater of the mind combat, where the game master says there's 4 goblins approaching you. You go, do your turns real fast. We're not breaking out the battle map.
Yeah, for this
everyone
random
just gets a
encounter,
turn.
that's easy.
Yeah.
Everyone just gets a turn. Let's blast this all out real fast.
And then
Whereas-
there's fight, which is
breaking out the battle map, rolling initiative.
yeah, this is
like,
like battle map,
positioning your
line of sight
character.
indicators. This is going the full 9 yards.
It was
Yeah.
hyper realistic.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So
how do we
much so
summarize
that
it quickly?
But
It's like Duel of Wits in the like choose your action simultaneously and they interact with each
Yeah.
other, and the skill rolls. Like it's like that. There are more actions, I believe.
Yeah,
The
many
more.
more.
There's
Yep.
a lot
I
more.
believe there's 36.
Yeah, there's way more options to choose from. There are armor and injuries come into play, which we'll talk about afterwards. But they will come into play for this. For every hit you can take, your armor can just ignore the hit. Your armor can degrade over time. Weapon range matters in positioning. Hesitation and how fast you act matters as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
action economy matters a lot.
once you guys got the hang of it, 2 minutes we got through a whole. It started going quite quickly.
As a system, it was really, really realistic, which was kind of cool and nice in that, okay, you're standing there posturing for a lot of the time, ducking out of this, the armor isn't protecting you, whatever. But it was also hyper realistic in, okay, this person is wounded or dazed, now they're going to hesitate for a bit, now that's going to spiral into a death spiral of they're out, and they're out really quickly. Because I really like fights. I love going in and being able to punch things out. And because the fighting and wound rules were so penalizing, like if you got hurt, you were out for a good couple of
Yeah.
months. It kind of made me shy away from maybe I don't want to do this fight because
Yeah.
then my character is going to be messed.
Armor.
Armor is dice, armor is dynamic, armor degrades, which makes it super interesting because you can continually hit the same point of armor to weaken it or destroy it, and that's how you win a fight. Because normally armor, a piece of metal won't let a knife through it until you destroy the piece of metal, and you've got to do it a bunch of times, and it does that really well. And
Yeah.
it's dynamic, which is cool.
Yep.
You're not sure if it's gonna work.
And weapon, basically, when you take damage, you roll armor. The armor has dice, basically, depending how good it is. And if any of them are successes, normally, you can negate the damage. Some weapons have extra bonus against armor, which means you need more than one success. And you ignore the hit completely. If you roll a 1, even if you succeed, if any of the dice are a 1 on most armor, the armor loses a die. It like will degrade over time from that hit. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will. It's random, well done, still semi-consistent, which is what it's intended to be. It's good.
Yeah,
If
when
you
your armor
have-
falls apart, you can take, even if you're a super hardy dude, like made of muscle, 2 good hits, you're down.
Once the way injury works is as you take injuries, you will start losing dice, obstacles will be higher than normal, and you'll start getting worse. That's the death spiral. You'll get penalties from it.
Once again, just trust it. Don't think about it.
Yes, just trust it.
Mhm.
Healing
You trust HP, and
takes
HP makes
a
no
very
sense.
long time. The worse a wound is, the longer it takes to heal. That makes sense.
Bloody.
Instead of D&D, where it
Bloody.
takes me 8 hours to recover from a near-fatal stabbing, it took my character 5 weeks, and we never got to week 5.
There is no such thing as magical healing in any of these books for Burning Wheel.
Which is
Maybe,
beautiful.
at least for the
Yes.
Manish stock. I haven't read through all of Elves. They
Elves
have
might, if
something.
they do.
No, elves have songs that they're spells that act like medicine rolls.
There's range and cover, which we did not use.
It's used for assaulting position, anything from assaulting to a position that's fortified to you can use it for a chase as well.
And then there's magic.
Yes.
So much magic.
So much bad.
Burning Wheel has a separate book that came out called the Codex,
Yeah.
with several magic systems inside of it. We used 2 of
Art
them
magic
and
and
back
necromancy.
on, but we never actually used the blood magic part. It was there to be used, but it never got used.
I explicitly made a no blood magic character.
All right.
So in the regular Burning Wheel book, there is a sorcery system. It is spell based. It is very powerful, and it is very unpredictable. And it can cut back pretty harshly on the caster as well. We did not use that. We used what's called art magic instead, which is basically a bunch of effects. Yeah, so basically you've got 3 effects that you're good at that you weave into different spells, and you have creative control over what those spells actually do. You can narrate them. So one of them is aid, basically. The mechanical effect is giving bonus dice to something else, but you can narrate that however you want.
Art magic is very simple, but you could also make it very complicated. Magic is fun. Magic is also bullshit because
You know what's more fun? The necromancy rules, because you could make your own horrific monsters.
yeah.
It was build a
Yes.
monster. All of the necromancy rules are build a monster.
So midway through the game, Krim got the hatred emotional magic, and it didn't affect a lot. It kind of gave another level of these are different things that I should be tracking to see if it levels up. It could have been used in a couple of different ways. I could basically substitute it in for different for a skill roll, so long as it was related to my
To murder.
hatred and
As long as
violence.
it was murder and violent, it was great. I love that
Yeah.
specificity. You get this powerful boon if you're doing violent.
The thing that I really like about emotional magic was the fact that it keeps leveling up, even from little minor things. It's going to keep on ticking up. Once it hits 10, it's an auto death. Your character is done, which is
Yeah,
really
well-
fun because I can see that as you get higher, yeah, your hatred or whatever you can roll with is getting more and more powerful, but you better be balancing it because as that keeps going up, you're literally going to be out of the game school soon. Your hatred is going to overrule your ability to function as a character. You're going to be gone.
What was it like GMing the game?
Session 0, you get everybody together. Usually the GM will have 2 or 3 different ideas to pitch of what's called the big picture. It's a starting scenario in which there is the situation is charged for change, and the players can assume the roles of people that can affect said change. So we all sit down, we go through, we agree on that, we build the world together. As a GM, you set up that inciting incident, and then just roll that ball down the hill and watch the players chase it. And from that point on, look to their beliefs for ways to set up the next session and things to challenge the players with. Because you always want to be going after the beliefs and finding ways to make your players make terrible choices.
I didn't run as much. It was just the shorter half of it. I really like I tell you the situation, and the players all think, all right, this is where I'm at. How do I get points for my beliefs? What do I have to do?
Yeah.
Players want to take action. It means they're inspired to go after what they want. I don't need to set up a narrative hook for the story because the narrative hook is per character. So I like that because it's not so much I have to tell you why you care. I don't care why you care. You care why you care. It's a personal decision at that point.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for making you care. If you want experience, you have to go after your beliefs.
You really need to make sure your players are crafting beliefs that don't send them in complete opposite direction.
Writing a belief properly is a skill. There's a very clear difference between a good and a bad belief. How does it interact with the other beliefs of yourself and the beliefs of other characters? Does it have an achievable goal? I believe this broad thing. Here's this specific thing I want to do about it.
And then sometimes people think me big dum dum. I will show I'm not big dum dum.
Yes.
Yeah, they're usually first person. They're what your character believes, so it's fine to write them in first person.
Yes,
as
and
the character,
for them to be fallible as well. Like,
yeah, they don't have to be true. It's not truths of the world. You're not writing facts. You're writing what your character believes, and that
what
can
they
be
want to
wrong.
do about it.
I think the Earth is flat. I will make a rocket to see if it is true.
I will say that this game appeals to me because I separate player and character sometimes when I'm looking at what I want to do, because the player wants to see that character do some messed up stuff and come out the other side. That character doesn't want anything to have to do with
Nope.
it.
Yes,
So
that's one
when
thing
you're
I think
writing your
Burning Wheel
beliefs-
taught me back when I played it the first time, is how to be a good director for your character and how to play a character and enjoy playing them and also enjoy making them suffer as their own player.
Yeah, you torture your own character.
Engage your
not the
sadism.
character.
Like, make beliefs that will point the character into a tricky and dangerous situation and make them make a hard choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to get all kinds of rewards for that.
You're
You're
gonna
going to
get
get
Artha,
Artha
and
for
it's
your beliefs,
interesting.
instincts, and traits. You're going to get extra Artha for embodiment or mold breaker and stuff like that. You can pile on the rewards for just driving your character into the dirt. This game will allow you to hate for the dwarf and elf hate each other and bear that out in the mechanics, but still be able to adventure together.
It doesn't have the adventuring party as a thing at all. The almost like I have to play my character like this way and like they'll agree with this other character because they're in the same party, so they can't try to kill each other or things like that.
Yeah, there's no concept of party. If you get sick of the little dwarf next to you that you've been walking for 3 months with, you can snap one day, stab them in their sleep, and then run off, and the game will keep going as scheduled.
Yeah, there's no
It's
like,
now tangent
oh
to-
well, I guess the thief is stealing again, and I'm a paladin, but we're both player characters. So what am I gonna do? No,
We
you will
switch to
cut
the
off
rest
his
of the
hand as the
session.
paladin.
The paladin is chasing the thief for killing the cleric. That's the rest of the session.
And I think that's the most important lesson of Burning Wheel. Actions have consequences.
Yes.
You don't do a damn thing in this game without 4 other things falling out underneath it because of what you did.
I thought about what reading the rulebook is like.
This is like the only rulebook I've read covered.
The game is excellent. The game is dense, and the rulebook isn't perfect at portraying the game. The skill and trait lists are next to each other and always get mixed up. The glossary, or the index rather, is difficult to parse because it's right next to another. Those
The rulebook is required material. Half of playing the game,
It's
4
flipping through the
different
book.
people
Is-
frantically
Yeah.
flipping.
yes,
I mean, I don't know if you can really see
Oh yeah,
Green
there's some.
screen.
my green screen, but
oh,
I
there's
had to
bookmarks
tab
all
on a
over.
bunch of stuff.
Green bookmarks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um,
mine's not tabbed.
that
I spent
one's
the
better,
whole time just
you know.
like nightmare flipping between these 2 books.
It takes effort, intentionality, and getting through part of itself to get to.
Yeah.
On the
It's
positive,
totally
just
worth
tone
it,
side of the book, I did like the author's tone, like the author's notes and the flavor. It was a very personal tone, which was kind of
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
especially considering it was very dense and dry.
When I say I read it cover to cover, I mean I've read everything inside the cover, but not in a straight line.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say don't let the rule book scare you, because even then I only read the parts that I needed. I like this quote from Travis Willingham is, if you gave someone the rule book to football, they would never play football. The rule book might make it seem
Yeah.
scarier than it is.
Just the rule for playing the game is that. The rest of it here, even though my green screen screwed the look of it.
The other 3/4 of it.
The rest of it is all life paths and subsystems and traits. You really only need, I think, about 80 pages.
Most of those
get-
pages are free. What does the game set out to do? Like, what does it say it's supposed to do?
Fight for what you believe, or since it's a role-playing game, fight for what your character believes. That's what Burning Wheel is in a nutshell. You are testing your character and putting them through their paces to achieve their to prove themselves right or wrong with their beliefs and achieve their goal.
Is the game good at what it sets out to do? At that specific thing, better than anyone, and it doesn't even come close, I think.
Yeah.
Would we play it again? We have literally been talking about that over the course of this.
Yeah, I can't. I will
Yes.
always say yes. Yes is my answer.
Literally my favorite game. Literally my favorite game.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean,
like I would play it again because I think the more you play it, the more the better you understand it, right? So if we played it
And-
again, I'd
yeah, and
build
also-
the character differently.
yeah,
And
every
not
time
even
you
just-
play it, you're gonna want to play a different character. Like I keep thinking,
Yeah.
like I want to play a different character. I want to play with a different subsystem. I want to be a wealthy merchant and care about
Yeah.
money and stuff, and want
Yeah.
to just keep moving
And
forward.
even beyond that, for different people, like I'm not a truly I want to build a bunch of characters, but I want to keep going deeper and deeper into the characters, and this
Yeah.
allows that almost indefinitely.
Who would we recommend the game to?
Anyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Anyone who wants a character-focused game, because if they're in the game to
Character-focused,
go
for sure.
and hit things
Yes.
and rule of cool, Burning Wheel's not going to work for them.
The
I
term
disagree.
It
beer
has
and
the-
I
pretzels.
disagree. Brutal historical fighting is everything. I love the
depends.
most brutal
Some
accurate-
people just play D&D to hang out with their friends and happen to play D&D on the side. I would only recommend it to them if there was if it was one of the one-shots with pre-made characters, because then they basically don't have to worry about reading the rules until they already know how it works.
Yeah.
You
And,
do not want to recommend it to any group that isn't willing to do the work to learn the rules and commit at least 12 sessions before you say, nah, this isn't for us.
Yes.
You want to give it that time to.
As I'm studying history, so the little historian in me is oh, I like the descriptions of the armor and the arms and stuff like that. It makes more historical sense, right? In that sense.
Anyone that tells me you can do anything with D&D 5th edition, I want to I'm not going to
Just
talk to
throw
them
the book
anyway.
Just throw the book at them and then leave.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend it to D&D players who are I
Purists,
mean,
D&D purists.
yeah,
Or
combat
people-
heavy focused people.
So if it's someone who isn't open to new things and that they aren't going to be, I wouldn't say willing to try it, like it basically. If they
Give it
Yeah.
a chance.
Also-
If they're not going to be open to giving it a chance, it's not going to work at all.
In a very specific sense, people who can't take that intensity or don't want to connect with their characters that much, that also might not be the game for them.
I disagree. I feel like the ability to write the beliefs and that striation between player and character of being able to say what your character's beliefs are means I have guideposts to do the directorial stuff. And I feel like it's way easier to be a director for your character in Burning Wheel, because that's my preferred way to play a character, is be a director. I can't embody well. It's hard, and I don't
Yeah.
like having to encounter hard brain things when I'm doing a game.
Yeah. I think Burning Wheel is good for both of those people, the director and the
Yeah.
actor.
I care about stories
Mhm.
and I care about characters. I just care less about my character. I just care about the story and the
Yeah.
characters. So being able to direct one of the actors is super fun for me. So that's kind of why I like the belief system, is I can direct my character, as opposed to D&D, I have to pilot.
rating, how would we rate the game?
I have 2 ratings for the game. The first one is a ESRB rating. Like this game, NC-17, if the group there's a lot of realism. So that is a concern for any GM running it, that there are
Oh,
parts of this
definitely.
game
Yeah.
that can
Session
go
zero is
above
important.
and beyond what people are comfortable with.
It's extremely easy to tone it down, honestly, even to just PG.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can play Burning Wheel with kids, and other than like a couple math skills, won't be that hard for them.
Well,
But
even
it
the math
requires
skills
the
are like-
conversation and conscious effort to tone it down. Because
Yeah.
as it stands in the book, it's raw. It's very raw in that sense. It
Yes,
doesn't
yes.
pull punches
Reading the
on
book
that
would
kind
be
of
higher than that. I was just talking about
medieval
playing the
bigotry.
game.
It doesn't pull punches on medieval bigotry, so you
Yes.
got to think about it and put thought into what you can and cannot pick, and you make conscious decisions, and that fixes it.
Yes.
As far as like my personal rating of Burning Wheel, a Towering Inferno is my recommendation. That is my rating. A Towering
Similarly,
Inferno.
I give Burning Wheel 5 out of 8 spokes.
Well, I am a bit more conventional with my rating systems here. I am going to give it a 9 out of 10 there.
9 out of
Simply
10
lost
what?
one on me for
9 out of
personal
10
preference
what?
because I like fighting things.
3 out of 3 dead wizards. No, sorry, 4 out of 4 dead wizards. Because that's probably
Okay.
what happened at the end of the game.
And I will rate it the High Roller, the largest Ferris wheel in the world in Las Vegas. That is what I'm rating it. A High Roller out of Ferris wheels.
Yeah.
High roller.
Good luck
Yeah,
in
it is in
interpreting
Las
that
Vegas.
word.
The Las Vegas Ferris wheel at 550 feet. It is the largest Ferris wheel in the world as of this random article.
Those are our official reviews. No further questions.
Yes,
Mhm.
but also play it. Pretty much everyone.
Play-
If you're watching
play it.
this
Oh, yeah.
video,
Go-
then you should play it.
100%.
If you found the
Play
time
it.
to dig through the nightmare of YouTube garbage to find this video, you have made it to the end. Just play the
Yes.
game.
It's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Play it.
Yeah, thank
So
you
next
for
week-
watching. Next week we'll be doing Session 0 Blades in the Dark. I will be GMing.
We don't stop. We don't stop for anything.
No,
Nope.
it's quarantine time. We're gonna get as many role-playing games out of the way as possible.